At 14:27 local time, the carrier's forward air search radar quietly changes modes. No warning tone, no announcement. Just a small shift in the sound of the circuit, the kind only trained ears notice. On the flight deck, a yellow shirt crew member stops mid-step. A tow tractor keeps idling. The sea is smooth, the horizon perfectly clear. Everything looks normal, until the first radar track slips below 1,000 feet. Inside the carrier's information center, the numbers sharpen. 700 feet, speed increasing, bearing unchanged. Two fast-moving contacts approaching from the southwest. Confirm profile. The answer comes back calm, almost routine. Fixed wing, high speed, military aircraft. Above deck level. Out on the deck, the atmosphere changes. Not the weather, but the pressure. A low sound begins to build across the bow, distant at first, then tighter and sharper. Jet noise, focused and directional, cutting through the familiar rhythm of carrier operations. The deck officer lifts one hand, palm open. Freeze movement. No one asks why. The radar updates again. The lead contact drops lower, 500 feet. That is no longer a simple transit altitude. That is a message. On the island, cameras rotate automatically, long lenses searching the empty sky. Then the sky is not empty anymore. The shape appears fast. Delta wings, single-engine intake, angular tail. An F-16 Fighting Falcon coming in low and hot, nose slightly down, riding the thin cushion of air above open water. A second aircraft follows off to the right, closer than a casual formation would suggest. They are not lost. They are not drifting. They are lining up. Inside the information center, the display fills with clean data. Speed, angle, descent rate, spacing. No release cues, no targeting indicators. Only velocity, precision, and intent. Altitude check. 400 feet and still descending. On the flight deck, tie-down crews lean into the wind as the first pressure wave moves through the air. The jet is still miles away, but its presence arrives early, flattening the sound around them and making the whole deck feel briefly hollow. No sirens, no shouted commands. The carrier does not turn. That matters. The F-16 drops again, 300 feet. At that height, the margin disappears. Every movement must be exact. Every correction must be perfect. There is no room for hesitation and no room for error. This is not a casual flyby. This is a controlled, low-level pass with a purpose. The afterburner flashes for a moment, a sharp orange glow against the blue, then disappears. The pilot wants speed, but not too much attention. He wants proximity, but not an open escalation. On the bridge, no one steps toward the rails. Eyes remain forward. Hands stay on instruments. Second contact, maintaining separation. Copy. The carrier's own aircraft stay parked, wings folded, engines silent. No launch cycle begins. No visible response is given. That message is just as deliberate. We are watching. We are recording. We are not reacting. The jet covers the final miles in seconds. The cameras now catch every detail. Panel lines, underwing pylons, the shimmer of heat behind the engine. The aircraft may be an older design, but the maneuver is sharp, disciplined, and unmistakably bold. A textbook low-altitude pressure move. The F-16 levels just above the wave tops, 200 feet, maybe less. It holds there, skimming the surface, forcing every person watching to make the same calculation at the same time. If the pilot pulls up now, it is theater. If he does not, it becomes something else entirely. The carrier's bow cuts through the water without changing rhythm, steady at speed, refusing to give the aircraft a reaction point. No turn, no pitch, no visible adjustment. Inside the information center, every system is recording. Each radar sweep, each radio spike, each tiny correction in the aircraft's flight path. Nothing is missed. Then the F-16 crosses the carrier's forward arc, close enough for deck crews to see the canopy flash in the sunlight. For a split second, the aircraft's shadow slides across the flight deck. Then it is gone. The second F-16 follows a little higher, a little wider, almost as if it is waiting to see whether the carrier will answer. It gets nothing. No visible warnings, no sudden signals, no bright countermeasure bursts, no dramatic movement from the ship. Only silence, discipline, and data. As the jets move ahead and begin a shallow climb, the carrier continues on her original heading, unchanged. The ocean closes behind them. The sky returns to clean blue. Inside CIC, the tracks stretch farther forward. Still fast, still close, but no longer descending. The first move has been made. No exchange over the radio, no visible confrontation. Only intent, recorded and time-stamped as the aircraft disappear ahead and the next phase slowly begins to take shape. At 14:29 local time, the carrier's internal posture changes. Not outward, not upward, inward. There are no sirens, no obvious shift on the flight deck, just a quiet recalibration across systems built for moments exactly like this. Inside the operations center, the air picture settles. The two fast movers are now in front of the ship. Still low, still fast, but their descent has ended. Their tracks are clean and predictable. That matters too. Maintain continuous track. Tracking solid. No one needs to define what they are seeing. The room already understands. The ship's sensors widen their focus, not to chase the aircraft, but to listen. Radar returns are separated from sea clutter. Electronic support systems begin collecting faint signals. Weak, intermittent, almost casual. Search patterns, not hard-lock behavior. Curious, probing, measuring the carrier's patience. On the bridge, the captain does not lean forward. He does not raise his voice. His posture remains exactly the same. That, too, is a message.
Below deck, systems synchronize. Not response systems, data systems. Timestamps align. Video feeds from deck cameras, mast-mounted optics, and long-range sensors are brought onto the same clock. From this point on, every movement will exist in order, frame by frame, second by second. Above the water, the F-16s adjust formation. The lead aircraft eases slightly left. The second jet drifts wider, increasing lateral separation. It is a small change, but it alters the geometry. Inside CIC, that change is noticed instantly. Second contact widening, aspect changing. Copy. The carrier does not match the move. No turn, no speed change, no attempt to mirror them. The ship remains a constant, tens of thousands of tons of steady, deliberate motion through open water. That is not passive. That is controlled. On the flight deck, activity resumes at a slower pace. A few steps here, a hand signal there. The deck officer lowers his arm. Non-essential movement remains limited, but the deck no longer looks frozen. It looks managed. The aircraft are still close enough to be heard, but the sound is thinning now. The pressure of the first pass has moved on. What remains is observation. Inside CIC, the picture grows deeper. The F-16's radar sweeps brush across the ship in brief touches. Low power, short duration. Enough to check presence, not enough to commit. The electronic warfare console marks each signal without comment. Emissions logged. No one reacts outwardly. The logging is the reaction. The aircraft begin to climb slightly, 400 feet, then 500. Still low, still deliberate, but no longer pressing down toward the deck. This is the window where mistakes are most dangerous. The carrier does nothing to create one. Instead, internal communication becomes tighter. Fewer words, shorter phrases. Standard language only, no speculation. Maintain ROE. Rules of engagement are not discussed in moments like this. They are remembered, line by line. Warn, record, hold position.
Do not raise the level unless the other side forces the moment. The carrier's defensive systems remain quiet. No visible tracking arrays swing into an aggressive posture. No deck panels move. Nothing appears that could be mistaken for preparation. That restraint is not uncertainty. It is discipline. The F-16s begin a shallow arc to starboard, now paralleling the carrier's track at a distance measured in miles instead of meters. The maneuver suggests a question.
Are we being followed? Are we being matched? They are not. The carrier holds course. The ultimate refusal to play. Inside CIC, analysts watch the aircraft's behavior more than their position. Control inputs, rate of climb, throttle changes, small details that reveal pressure, confidence, or calculation. The pilots are skilled, that is clear. Their movements are smooth, but smooth does not always mean neutral. At 14:33, the lead aircraft briefly increases power, then eases back again. A pulse, a test.
The ship's sensors catch the thermal spike immediately. Logged. On the bridge, the captain glances once at the repeater display. The contacts are still there, still close, still not pushing further. He gives a single nod. No orders follow. The carrier's air wing remains silent. No launch sequence begins. No elevated deck posture appears. No additional aircraft enter the scene from above. That absence speaks louder than any announcement could. The F-16s finish their arc and start moving forward again, slowly increasing distance, as if measuring how much space is enough. They remain within visual range, but the geometry has changed. The direct line is gone. Inside CIC, the tracks extend farther out. Speed remains high, but the closure rate fades to zero. Contacts opening. Copy. The carrier's internal posture remains in place for several more minutes. Systems keep listening. Cameras keep recording.
No one assumes the moment is finished simply because the aircraft have moved away.
Finally, the jets push farther ahead and climb to a safer altitude. Their sound fades into the steady background of wind, machinery, and sea. The carrier gives no visible acknowledgement, no ship-wide announcement, no commentary, no change in attitude. The flight deck returns to its normal rhythm. Tow tractors begin moving again. A plane captain picks up his checklist exactly where he stopped, as if the last few minutes had been part of the routine all along.
Inside CIC, the final data packets are time-stamped and archived.
The second move is complete. No open confrontation, no escalation. Just a carrier that refused to blink, and two aircraft that now understand that clearly. At 14:36 local time, the carrier's sensors stop simply reacting and begin collecting. The aircraft are still there. Farther now. Higher now. But the encounter has entered a different phase. What began as proximity has become pattern. What looked like pressure has become behavior. Inside the Combat Information Center, attention shifts away from the main tactical display and toward the margins. Side panels, secondary readouts, and quiet subsystems that only matter when someone knows exactly what to look for. The F-16s settle into a loose forward trail, 5 to 7 miles ahead of the ship. Their altitude stabilizes just under 1,000 feet. Low enough to be noticed, high enough to be comfortable. They are no longer pressing directly toward the carrier. They are testing.
The ship allows it. Electronic support systems catch a brief signal,
Barely more than a whisper on a familiar search frequency. Not a firm track in action, not a decisive cue. Just a light touch across the carrier's electronic outline. It is enough. Emission detected, low power, time-stamped, logged, correlated. The radar sweep from the aircraft is not forceful, but it is careless. Too wide, too exposed. The kind of scan used by someone who believes he owns the moment.
On the carrier, no one interrupts him.
Instead, multiple sensors begin working together. Radar returns align with infrared signatures. Exhaust patterns are measured for tiny temperature changes. Control surface movements are tracked frame by frame. The closer an aircraft comes, the louder it becomes. Not in sound, in data. The lead F-16 adjusts pitch slightly, correcting for turbulence. For the pilot, it is instinct, muscle memory, a tiny correction made without thought. For the carrier, it is information, captured, compared, filed. The wingman drifts outward again, increasing lateral separation. He is still watching the ship, still waiting for a reaction that never arrives. That silence is intentional. The carrier does not paint the aircraft with a dramatic signal. It gives no visible cue that might force the pilots to change their behavior. They are allowed to act naturally, and natural behavior reveals far more. Another brief increase in power, another thermal bloom, another set of numbers added to the growing file. Inside CIC, the mood is not tense, it is focused. The analysts are not waiting for something to happen, they are letting it happen. Every aircraft tells a story, whether the pilot means to or not. Speed changes, climb rates, preferred angles, the way it enters a turn, the way it leaves one, the delay between input and response. All of it speaks. The aircraft make another shallow adjustment. This time, they angle slightly closer toward the carrier's forward quarter. Not enough to force a response, just enough to remind everyone they are still there. The ship stays steady. Ship maintaining course and speed. That confirmation is repeated at intervals, not for comfort, but for the record. The F-16's radios flicker with brief internal traffic. Nothing clear, nothing long enough to interpret, but the rhythm matters. Time between transmissions, signal strength, channel behavior, all of it is logged. The carrier's own emissions remain quiet. Passive systems take the lead. The ship listens without speaking, turning the moment into a one-sided exchange. Above deck, sailors hear only a distant rumble now. Less like pressure, more like background noise. The sky feels open again. The jets are just small shapes against the blue. Inside CIC, they are anything but small. At 1440, the lead aircraft dips slightly, no more than 50 feet, then corrects. A human moment. A reminder that even a carefully planned, low-level display still carries risk. That small dip creates a fresh set of measurements. Angle of attack, control response, correction time. Captured. The aircraft have now been operating near the carrier for more than 10 minutes. In data terms, that is a long time. Long enough for habits to appear. Long enough to separate what was rehearsed from what was improvised. The wingman rolls his wings once, smooth and deliberate. It looks casual. It is not. That motion exposes the aircraft's profile to several sensors at the same time. Radar reflections shift, heat patterns change. Sunlight catches surfaces that were hidden moments before. It becomes the clearest snapshot yet. Inside CIC, no one reacts visibly, but several consoles register new confirmation markers. The carrier has what it needs. Still, the ship does not force the moment to end. It lets the aircraft choose when to leave. That choice matters. The F-16s begin a gradual climb. Not sharp, not perfectly synchronized. One aircraft climbs first, the other follows a few seconds later. The timing difference is noted. As their altitude increases, their signals become quieter. The aircraft grow more careful, more measured. Now the pilots understand that something has shifted. They cannot see it directly, but they can feel it. The carrier remains unchanged, still moving forward, still silent, still predictable. By the time the aircraft reach 1,500 feet, their posture no longer feels assertive. It feels cautious. The low passes are over. The performance is complete. Inside CIC, the final data packets are secured, cross-referenced and stored. The moment was never controlled by a single dramatic action. It closed slowly, quietly, almost invisibly, while the aircraft still believed they were shaping the encounter. No warnings, no forced moves, no visible escalation. Just two jets that came close to deliver a message and left after giving one away. At 14:43 local time, the geometry tightens again. Not sharply, not suddenly, just enough to matter. The lead aircraft levels at 1,200 feet and begins easing back toward the carrier's projected path.
The movement is subtle. A 5-degree heading change, a few seconds of steady alignment. But inside the Combat Information Center, the entire picture shifts. Contact altering vector, CPA decreasing. Closest point of approach calculations update in real time. The numbers are not critical yet, but they are trending the wrong way. This is the point where an encounter either fades away or becomes something more serious. On the flight deck, the deck officer raises his hand again. Not high, just enough to be seen. The meaning is understood immediately. Non-essential movement stops. No one runs. No one rushes. The carrier's outline remains unchanged against the water. Bow steady. Wake clean. Speed constant. Inside CIC, the posture sharpens without becoming aggressive.
Sensors narrow their focus.
Passive systems remain in control, but the margins are smaller now. Maintain current ROE. The reminder is procedural, not emotional. The F-16's nose dips slightly, then steadies. It is not pushing down hard, but it is no longer clearly leaving either. The wingman stays offset behind it, watching both the ship and the lead aircraft. This is the line. One more move inward, and the character of the encounter changes. One misunderstood signal, and the moment stops being simple observation.
The carrier doesn't move to cut it off. Instead, something small changes. A surface-mounted system slews a few degrees. Not quickly, not fully, just enough to be noticed by anyone looking for it. A visible acknowledgement without escalation. It is not a challenge, it is awareness made visible. Inside CIC, that movement is logged as well. Not because it changes the balance, but because it completes the record. Every action on both sides now has context. The aircraft reacts. The lead F-16 hesitates, not in speed, its velocity stays constant. The hesitation is in attitude. The nose lifts a fraction, the turn rate pauses. It lasts less than 2 seconds, but it is there. The carrier's radios remain silent. No challenge, no broadcast, no dramatic signal. Silence here is not emptiness, it is restraint. In that quiet, the F-16 pilot makes his decision. He rolls right, just enough to widen separation, then climbs another 200 feet. The move is conservative and calculated. An exit path taken without announcing it.
The wingman mirrors the adjustment a moment later, climbing and widening in the same smooth, practiced motion. The formation reforms. Not for another pass, for departure. Inside CIC, the closest approach numbers widen again. Time to closest approach stretches, then loses importance. Contacts opening. Copy. The deck officer lowers his hand. Movement resumes in small steps. One crewman takes a pace forward. Another follows. The flight deck begins to breathe again.
Above, the aircraft continue climbing, moving into cleaner air, their sound fading back into the background. They are still present, still visible, but they are no longer pressing. The carrier does not acknowledge the change. No course correction, no speed adjustment, no visible sign of relief, pressure, or pride. That matters too. They transmit once, briefly, internal traffic only. Logged. At 14:47, the F-16 bank away from the carrier's forward arc completely, committing to a new heading that will carry them clear of the ship's path. Their altitude rises steadily now. 2,000 feet, then 3,000. The line has been understood. The carrier remains exactly where it was, doing exactly what it had been doing before the aircraft appeared. The sea closes behind their bow, as if nothing unusual has happened. Inside CIC, the posture eases, but the recording continues. No one declares the encounter finished just because the aircraft are leaving. It is only over when the geometry says it is over.
When the tracks finally stretch far enough that distance removes the risk from the picture,
systems begin returning to normal. Not all at once, not dramatically, one by one, quietly. No one marks the moment out loud. The fourth move ends the same way the first began, without words. A boundary was tested, a response was shown without escalation, and once the line was drawn, it did not need to be crossed to be understood.
At 14:52 local time, the air picture becomes simple again. Two fast-moving tracks remain near the edge of the display, climbing steadily and opening range with every update. Their vectors no longer touch the carrier's projected path. The geometry that once mattered now dissolves into open sky. Contacts fading. Copy. Inside the Combat Information Center, the posture changes for the final time. Not toward readiness, but toward closure. Systems do not shut down. They return to baseline. Recording continues, but the urgency has passed. The encounter is ending on its own. On the flight deck, operations return to full rhythm. A tow tractor rolls forward. A plane captain resumes a checklist without looking up. The deck does not acknowledge what just moved above it. That is not indifference. That is discipline restoring normal. Above, the F-16s climb higher, their shapes shrinking against the sky. No final pass, no signal, no last display of confidence or concession, just distance. The carrier does not chase them with its attention.
Inside CIC, the quiet work begins. Logs are checked for continuity. Timestamps are verified. Sensor feeds are cross-referenced to make sure nothing is missing and nothing is out of order. This is where encounters truly end. Every second of proximity has already been captured. Radar behavior, altitude shifts, heat patterns, radio rhythm, formation discipline. None of it needs dramatic language. The record speaks clearly enough. At 14:56, the aircraft tracks blend into the wider air picture.
Their individual signatures fade into background traffic. They are no longer a factor.
Tracks lost. Copy.
Maintain standard watch. No celebration follows. No commentary. The carrier continues on her original heading, cutting cleanly through the water, her wake unbroken. In the bridge log, the event is reduced to precise language. Time, position, number of aircraft, altitude, closest point of approach, duration. No emotion, no assumptions. Only facts. Below deck, the data is already being packaged. Not for attention, not for spectacle, for reference, for comparison, for the next time something similar happens. And there will be a next time. Every encounter adds to a wider pattern. Every pattern sharpens understanding. That is how advantage builds quietly, without open confrontation. The flight deck sounds normal again. Wind, engines, voices carried only a short distance before disappearing into the noise of the ship. The sky is empty once more.
From the outside, nothing appears to have changed. Inside the ship, everything that mattered has already been secured. The carrier never broke course, never raised the temperature, never gave the aircraft the reaction they seemed to be looking for. Yet by the time they left, the imbalance was clear. One side came close to be seen. The other stayed steady and saw everything. As the horizon settles back into its familiar line, the moment becomes part of the record. Another entry, another dataset.
Another quiet confirmation of how these encounters end when restraint holds. The carrier presses on unchanged, her mission uninterrupted. And somewhere beyond the curve of the sea, two aircraft head home, carrying fuel burn, flight time, and memory. The ship they approached carries something more lasting.